If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. The Warrior of Light can't go anywhere without someone asking him for something, and when he heads back to Mordona, a Roganin had been looking for you in particular. A friend of his had sent him a letter saying that he needed your help with an important, very confidential task, which means not only can't the man tell you what you're needed for, he can't even tell you who needs you. But he thinks you'll recognize him once you see him. If you're going to help, which we know that you are, he wants you to head to Limsa Lominsa to meet with Denston. The guy works for his friend, so he can tell you what to do next. I'm just waiting for the day when the Warrior of Light walks off when someone tries to send him on a scavenger hunt, but today's not that day, so it's off to Limsa we go. Apparently this mission really is serious, because as soon as you get there, Denston doesn't waste any time telling you what needs to be done. It involves Mistbeard, a very well-known pirate. Mistbeard was known by all, feared by most, and loved by some until he just vanished one day. He didn't exactly vanish, but instead took off his mask and joined Merlwyb when she set out to hunt down her father who'd been tempered by Leviathan. But that's not what Denston's talking about today. Rumors have spread that Mistbeard left behind some treasure. That's where you come in, and Einzar, aka Mistbeard, shows up to clue you in. But first he wants you to understand that he's not asking for your help on behalf of the Navy, since this is more of a personal matter. For a while, people had lost interest in Mistbeard's treasure, since no one had managed to learn anything about its location, but recently that's changed. In the south, there are some small islands where very few ships go because the mist in the area is so thick that you can hardly see anything. Worse, all of the ships that have sailed into that mist never came out. A few survivors from some of those voyages washed up on the shore, and when they came to, they talked about an island hidden in the mist that appeared so fast that they crashed into it, destroying their ships. So the place got named Hullbreaker Isle, which is actually a pretty cool name. After the calamity, the mist would disappear sometimes, and one day while the mist was gone, a merchant accidentally went through the area, and he saw that the Haar, Mistbeard's flagship, was one of the ships that had crashed in the Hullbreaker Isle. The merchant wanted to explore the ship, but he made the wise decision to leave before the mist came back, trapping him there. When he got back to Limsa, he ordered his crew not to say anything. But who really keeps secrets these days? Now treasure hunters are racing to the Isle to find the treasure. Einzar wants you to get there first, find Mistbeard's ship, and get a golden chest that has Mistbeard's crest on it. He would do the job himself, but with him being the Storm Marshal, he'd draw a lot of attention, which is why he wants you to go. As payment, as long as you bring back what he asked for, anything else you find is yours, which is probably the only payment anyone's offered the Warrior of Light that actually matches the job he was hired for. And that's more than enough reason to accept the mission, although Denston's setting you up with a ride to the island, but telling you that you have to find your own way back should have made you nervous. But I don't think the Warrior of Light is smart enough to be nervous, because he goes to the island without even hesitating. Animals of all kinds wander around the isle, not to mention a few voidsent who possess treasure chests and turn them into mimics. And as I'm sure you already know, they're all hostile toward you. But after traveling and fighting your way past them all, you finally make it to Mistbeard's ship, which is of course guarded by a kraken. It tries to grab you and eat you, but after you slap its tentacles enough, it decides you're not worth the trouble and it leaves, allowing you to claim Mistbeard's treasure. Einzar's happy to see that you pulled it off, and since you found it, he shows you what's in the chest. Turns out it held Mistbeard's mask, which is more important than you might think. Apparently Mistbeard has been a lot of different people throughout history. The title passed on to men who were deemed worthy, along with the mask. So if someone had gotten their hands on the mask, they could have gathered a following that could have caused the stability of Limsa to come to an end. And since Einzar decided to drop the mantle of Mistbeard for the sake of the Admiral's vision of a united Limsa, he couldn't let that happen, and with your help, Einzar's made sure that Mistbeard's drawn his last breath. But because pirates don't waste anything, Einzar couldn't just let the Haar sit there and get picked apart by scavengers, so he petitioned the Admiral to set up a camp on the island that can be used to train soldiers, since the island is far enough away and dangerous enough to give a real taste of combat to the soldiers. The main reason he wants to put the soldiers into some real combat situations is because he thinks the men are getting soft, and he wouldn't mind if you joined in for a little training exercise. He really wants you to run the gauntlet that they set up on the island to see what the Maelstrom's elite soldiers can improve on. They make it a point to tell you not to be too rough. They don't want you to break any bones, but if you knock a few teeth out, that'll teach them to keep their guard up and bob and weave a little faster. The pirates give the Warrior of Light some of the best jobs. Denston wishes he could join in, but unfortunately he's on mist watch because if no one pays attention, they won't be able to track when the mist will cover Hullbreaker Isle again, and that would be bad. But he's still glad that a legendary hero like you is willing to help them out. So once again you head back to Hullbreaker Isle, but the place has changed a lot since that last visit. The formerly wild animals have been put into pens and used as warm-ups for the soldiers, which is probably not something that OSHA would approve of, but what did you expect from a pirate training course? Hearing that the Warrior of Light was going to be there caused some of the larger pirate crews like the Sirens and the Krakens to show up and test themselves against you. That's the problem with being the best. Everybody wants a piece of you. That also means you never get the chance to get rusty either, and the Warrior of Light cuts his way through them all. Even Storm Commander Riki finally gets to take a shot at you, something that she's wanted to do for a long time. Seeing everybody fighting gets Einzar riled up, and he decides to go a few rounds with you too. Merlewip taunts him when he starts to lose, so he decides to not hold back anymore and slaps on the mask of Mistbeard that he said he would get rid of, and goes all out against you. He still loses because of course he does, but that doesn't mean he didn't enjoy it. When you get back to Limsa, Denston wants to hear all about it, and Einzar is more than happy to tell the story of how you wrecked everybody, and even caused the Sirens and the Krakens to show up. Technically, they are a part of Limsa's military after the Galadian Accord, but they normally refuse to train with the Maelstrom. But who could resist training with you? Only idiots turn down the opportunity to work with professionals. When Denston notices how the commander is limping, he realizes that even he had gotten involved, something that Denston would have abandoned his own post to see. Old or not, watching the chief fight would have been the highlight of his day, and he hopes that you'll come train with them again someday so he'll finally get to see it. Connie Center and her siblings work together to listen to the elements and deal with any problems that show up in the land, and recently her brother has heard some bad news, which is what Isumi Yan, the conjurer trainer, wanted to talk to you about. Something's been stirring in the lost city of Amdapor out in the South Shroud. During the 5th Astral Era, the city was a thriving place of magic, but it was sealed during the time of the War of the Magi. Unfortunately, because of the most recent calamity, the seal on the city was weakened, which caused the forest around the place to start to die. That's a very serious thing to the elementals and the Pajal, so Isumi Yan wants you to figure out why it's happening. Normally the Twin Adders would have dealt with the problem, but they're stretched very thin, so hiring an accomplished adventurer is the best way for them to move forward. Since you agree to help, the Warrior of Light heads to meet Raya Osena at Camp Tranquil so she can explain what her brothers discovered. Raya already knows why you're there, but she wishes Isumi had explained more to you so she wouldn't have to do it, but it is what it is. Other than Amdapor Keep, the lost city of Amdapor is all that's left of the Amdapori. There are no records on how the city got wiped out, but the elementals say it was done in by what they call an unclean presence. Elementals are always very vague, but Raya thinks that whatever her brother sensed is the very thing that destroyed the city. Arun Senna, her brother, finally shows up to fill in the rest while his sister complains about him taking so long. He probably had a hard time finding you because he keeps his hair over his eyes for some reason. Don't understand how that's not annoying. In any case, the thing he senses in Amdapor is getting stronger every day and is freaking the elementals out. Whatever's waking up in the city has them more afraid than he's ever seen them, and he wants you to go into the city to see what it is and destroy it if you can. There's a wood whaler named Alphine guarding the place, so if you let him know why you're there, he should let you in. They send word ahead of you, and from what Alphine senses coming from the city, he admits that you're more brave than he is for going in there at all. The city's ether has been out of balance since the calamity, and now the place is a festering pool of rot and decay, and the animals have been driven insane by the changes in the environment. It's definitely not a place you'd put all that high on your list of vacation sites, especially if you have allergies or any self-preservation skills. As you head deeper into the city past the mutated insects, you reach a place where it seems like multiple voidsent are bound, and at the very heart of the prison, you come across Diabolos, who at first thinks you're one of the white mages of Amdapor who finally thinks that they can destroy him. The Warrior of Light manages to win, but Diabolos claims that sleeping for so long has weakened him, so he turns into a cloud of bats and flies away. That means you're definitely going to run into him again. That happens in the Shadows of Ma'ak series, which I'll link at the end of this video so you can see just what Diabolos does now that he's free from Amdapor. But that's a problem for later. Unfortunately, the issues with the Lost City did not end with Diabolos. After you drove the voidsent off, Isumiyan and the other Pajal went into the ruins with the elementals. The elementals freaked out again, saying that something with incredible power was still deep within the city. And now the elementals won't go back into the area until the threat's been dealt with. So once again, you head back to Camp Tranquil to talk with Raya. She is, of course, happy to see you again. Since you were able to deal with the first threat in Amdapor, she figures that you can handle this one too. She would have told you about it on your first trip, but she couldn't sense it beneath the darkness that Diabolos was radiating. She wants you to do whatever it takes to fix the place, while the rest of them try to calm the elementals, so it's back into the city you go. The city is a little less tainted without Diabolos' influence, so you're free to search other areas, although the monsters there are still very much hostile. After dealing with some savage insects and making your way deeper into the city, you come across the reanimated corpses of Ma'aki and Amdapori mages who died during one of the battles of the War of the Magi. Then you come across some of the city's defenses that should seem extremely familiar. They are statues that look very much like Sin Eaters that you encountered in Shadowbringers. Now there are a few possible reasons why, but since none of them are confirmed as far as I know, I have to do a little speculating. So during the War of the Magi, when Ma'ak and Amdapor were trying to destroy each other, the Ma'aki mage Shatoto figured out how to summon voidsent, which gave them an edge. I think as a means of countering the dark ether-fueled voidsent, the Amdapori tried to make light ether creatures of their own. This probably led to the birth of the very first Sin Eater, but due to the way the ether works on the source, the creatures would have either taken way too much ether to make, or would have been too weak to challenge the voidsent. So instead of trying to make more of the creatures, they made stone golems in the shape of the Sin Eaters and powered them up with magic, and used them to fight the voidsent. That's all just a theory, but it's one that makes a little bit of sense since the Amdapori wouldn't have known that the voidsent came from another dimension, and they wouldn't have been able to summon actual Sin Eaters since the creatures of the first wouldn't have existed at the time of the war. Regardless, the Warrior of Light fights his way through Amdapor and takes down the golems, which turn out to be what the elementals had been spooked by. The defenses of Amdapor had likely both been awakened and damaged by the calamity that had weakened the seal on the city, and since they were built to repel external magic from Ma'ak, they probably thought the elementals were enemies, which is what made the elementals flee for their lives. In any case, the mission is accomplished, the day is saved, and all that's left is to deal with Diabolos and whatever he's planning. If there's one thing people know about adventurers, is that they're always looking for something exciting and a little bit dangerous to do. And exploring ancient ruins is always exciting, which is why Nedrick Ironheart tells the Warrior of Light about Amdapor Keep. It's a ruined fortress out in South Shroud that was built sometime back in the 5th Astral Era, which means it could be a very interesting place to explore, so you head to the South Shroud to check it out. The entrance is guarded by a woodweller named Maxine, and since Nedrick sent you, she thinks it'll be a good idea to let you know exactly what you'll be facing if you head into the keep. The place was built by the Amdapori, ancient masters of all things arcane, and they built a lot of incredible structures like the keep all around the world. Unfortunately, the keep's been taken over by a cult called the Lambs of Dalamud, who have been summoning voidsent, which is why the woodwellers are more than happy to let adventurers run around and thin out the cultist numbers. So not only does the Warrior of Light get to explore some ruins, he gets to deal with some weirdos and some voidsent, which makes for a fine way to spend a bit of time. However, to say that the cult had summoned a few voidsent would be a serious understatement. There are a lot of them, and the cult is more of a small army than a handful of crazies, which gives you quite a few relatively dangerous voidsent to deal with. But fortunately for you and the people of the Shroud, it wasn't anything that you couldn't handle. And not only do you deal with the voidsent, the Warrior of Light all but wipes the cult out in its entirety. With the job done, the Warrior of Light heads back to Mordona, only to run into Lorianne, who's already heard word of someone clearing the cult out of Amdapor Keep. She of course didn't know that it was you, but that's a good thing, because a healer called Adestan has sensed something evil coming from the keep, and he wanted to talk to someone who had already ventured into the place. So you head to Camp Tranquil to see what's happened. When you tell him who you are, Adestan immediately tells you everything. Arun Senna had sent him to investigate the keep, and what he found is bad, which is why he needed you. Even though the Lambs of Dalamud have been wiped out, and their voidsent summoning stopped, the dark presence that's coming from the keep seems to get stronger every day. Woodwellers went into the place to find out why, and it turns out that someone finished the cultists' ritual and summoned a very powerful voidsent to lead a small army of the creatures. Adaston wants you to deal with it before it wreaks havoc on the countryside. Maxine's surprised to see that you ended up being the one to come and help yet again, but she warns you that your trip won't be the same as it was the last time. This new voidsent has corrupted the animals, turning them into savage beasts and making the place even more dangerous than it was before. She hopes that dealing with the voidsent leader will solve this problem, so you head inside to do just that. The voidsent hasn't just corrupted the animals, even the plants have grown into monstrous man-eating things, and that makes your second trip into Amdapor Keep all the more dangerous. And there are tons of lesser voidsent to contend with that don't make the situation much better. But you fight your way through them all and come face to face with Ferdiad, who is a step above any of the other creatures that you face in the keep. However, that doesn't stop you from overpowering him too. Although while it looks like you finished him off for good, when the Warrior of Light leaves the keep, Ferdiad's laughter follows him. Back at Camp Tranquil, Adaston is happy that you've dealt with the problem, but he's still trying to figure out who summoned the voidsent in the first place, since the cult was dead and gone. Other than the animals and the voidsent, there wasn't a single human alive in the keep, but the corpses of the cult members were still where you had left them after your first visit, which makes Adaston believe that the lifeblood of the cultists mixing with the runes of summoning that they had drawn had finished their spells, meaning it was only right that you dealt with the voidsent, since you had inadvertently helped summon them in the first place. Near the Waking Sands, the Warrior of Light runs into an adventurer named Aline, who's been having a rough time since her trip into the Wanderer's Palace nearly killed her. But apparently she doesn't regret the experience. After the most recent calamity, half of the water in Camp Bronze Lake vanished, revealing an ancient temple, and she went there with her boyfriend. The place was pristine, practically undamaged by all of the water, and they were enjoying seeing the sights there, so she figures an adventurer like you would like the place too. If you want to go and check it out for yourself, her friend Abazi Chirazi in Camp Bronze Lake will give you a ride. Naturally, you wouldn't pass up an opportunity to see an ancient temple, so you head out to meet the guy. Turns out Aline hadn't told you the whole story. She sent a lot of adventurers to the Wanderer's Palace, hoping that one of them will rescue her boyfriend. Aline had gone in with 6 others, and as soon as they set foot in the place, a Tonberry attacked them. It was dark and the floor was wet, making it really hard to fight back. Only Abazi and Aline made it out alive. Everyone else died. Aline still has hope, but Abazi saw what the Tonberry did to his friends. The same will happen to you if you try to wander around in the place, but since you want to go, he takes you. The place is as beautiful as Aline said it was, and filled with Tonberry. Other adventurers who the woman tricked into braving the depths of the place are running for their lives from the little, and not so little, green knife-wielding psychos. The Wanderer's Palace was originally a temple dedicated to the Nemean patron god Oshan, who ruled over the mountains. Now the thing about the Tonberry is they are actually the cursed people of Nim. The Ma'aki, during the War of the Magi, had unleashed the voidsent Batoso on the Nemean people, and it gave them a disease that made their noses and ears melt away, their bodies turned green, and their limbs shriveled up. To try and stop the plague from spreading, everyone infected was locked away in the Wanderer's Palace. Because they didn't know about the unseen voidsent, the Nemean mages used magic to bury the place underwater, and it stayed that way until recently. The Warrior of Light, being who he is, fights his way to the bottom of the place and kills the Tonberry King. Despite that, there is no sign of Aline's boyfriend, meaning Abazi was right about the fate of his friends. A little while later in Mordona, word of you killing the Tonberry King has spread, and there's a guy looking for you who wants to offer you a job. He and his partner are out at Camp Bronze Lake, so once again you head back there. They turn out to be 2 of the adventurers that you ran past in the Wanderer's Palace, who were stabbed nearly to death by the Tonberry. And what they want you to do is go back into the palace, but it's for a reason that you probably wouldn't believe. After they had got stabbed, they thought they were done for, but all of a sudden the Tonberry started patching them up. Apparently the only reason they were attacking people was because of a curse that you lifted by killing the Tonberry King. Now this isn't the curse that turned them into the creatures in the first place, but something different altogether, which probably means they should stop dealing with magic because they really don't have good luck with it. Once the curse was lifted, staying in the palace was outright pleasant, but it didn't last. A group of Mamoja called the Silver Scales came into the palace and took over. The Tonberries who weren't killed in the attack were locked deep in the ruins, and the 2 treasure hunters want you to free them. If they were stronger, they'd do it themselves, but since they can't, they want you to do it. So you get a Bazi to shuttle you to the palace again so you can act as the savior of the Tonberries. The Silver Scales seem to have a lot of members, and they all seem to take pride in picking on the much smaller Tonberries, so the Warrior of Light cuts a path through them, fighting his way to their two-headed leader. You beat him, but before you get the chance to finish him off, a pack of Tonberries rush in and put their knives to use. Now that the palace is back under Tonberry control, the two adventurers decide to head back into the place because now that it's safe, it's not such a bad place to live. This concludes the story of the Wanderer's Palace. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time.